whenever Ajahn Chah asked a question, be careful. Because if you tried to answer the question, then you were probably in trouble. So he says, well, how was the meditation? And of course, some willing person was willing to raise their hand and says, well, said, it was all right, but it was quite noisy. The cars on the road, they were on the street. It was quite noisy. And so Ajahn Chah pauses for a moment. He says, well, he said, that noise, he says, did the noise come to bother you? Or did you go out to bother the noise?
It came a point when I didn't have a good cry, and I don't mean just a kind of, a cry, a real weep, like to the ground, and just in total kind of utter despair. And there was an incredible kind of cleansing feeling to it.
We've been taught that the aim of Buddhism is to reach nirvana. So how could you compare nirvana to heaven?
I think probably the best way to answer is say in Christian concept of like heaven and hell, often is seen like an eternal state, whereas in Buddhism we see heaven and hell as not eternal, or kind of state, or transient states. Chah sampadang awerang asabadang nidang jarang nisinno asayano ayam.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami namatu acharya sati. Our โอกาสต่อไปนี้จงพากันตั้งใจฟังพระธรรมเทศนาเพื่อประโยชน์เพื่อได้ปฏิบัติในศีลธรรมและได้ทำความเข้าใจให้ทุกๆคนที่มาร่วมในนี้ So that will give you a little sense of what it was like to be a Western monk in Thailand with Venerable Ajahn Chah and not knowing what the heck was being said. You ask for it, you're going to get it. If everybody's had an opportunity to see either Ajahn or myself at least once, and most people, some people, both of us, and given us a sense of kind of the things that are coming up for people, and nothing frighteningly unusual or weird, or so rest assured there. I haven't heard any yet. I haven't heard Ajahn say any. So we're all going through similar things that come up when we come in a situation like this on a retreat. But one of the a couple of resounding things, but I think important one, and Ajahn Amaro kind of put the stamp on it this morning after the meal, or maybe it was, I can't remember. But anyway, there's been a kind of a general murmur of, can I talk more about Ajahn Chah and time with him? And so I thought, well, that would be a good way to start, to give a sense of going in the early days and not being proficient in the Thai language, knowing what was going on, and can just see our minds when we don't understand, and we're kind of like, oh, well, what do I do with this? And maybe you thought, well, is he going to continue like this? And is maybe the Queen of Thailand showed up and she's over in the corner listening and he's speaking for her? Or But what I'd like to do is just kind of recollect in a way that I never really have, and there may be some things that I've said before and be repeated, whatever. But so I've kind of been letting that theme kind of run through my heart. And it was interesting when we first started sitting this evening. There was a little bit of light rain, just a kind of the pitter patter. And I was thrown back to the little meditation hall that we had at the monastery, and the Nana Chah, the international monastery in Thailand. And it was just so similar. There was not a lot of heat, but it was fairly warm in here, kind of stuffy, and then this gentle patter of rain, and kind of universal sound that we hear in different parts of the world. When I my first encounter with I'll use Luang Por and I'll use Luang Por. I'll try to use Luang Por more, because Luang Por is usually referred to as Luang Por Sameto. And just a bit of history that those that don't know, everybody calls Ajahn Sameto Luang Por Sameto now, and a lot of the other senior monks. And so Luang is a Thai word that means like great or grand, and Por is father. So the two together are great father or grandfather. And, or as one American, when I explained this to him, he says, "Oh yeah, Big Daddy." So, Big Daddy. Luang Po. Po is like older. Po is like great-grandfather. So the Luang with the Po is even kind of more generations and more of a distance, more respected, higher elevated. And the combination, whether it's towards father or grandfather, great-father, great-great-grandfather, literal translation, there's an elevation of not only reverence and respect, but also it's intimate. It's has a kind of a familiarity without being overly familiar. So you always kind of would use that. And so if you ask something and, what do you want to do? Or where are you going to go this year for the Rains retreat? Where would you like to go? You say, "Leao Tai Luang Por." Whatever you say. It's up to you. So there was always that deference to him that you learned fairly quickly on, because tried to make yourself available for whatever the need of his need, but the bigger need of the community, of the Sangha as a whole. When I first came and met him, inspired by this young American novice that I'd mentioned with the kind of the kit from the jungle, the monk kit from the jungle, the big alms bowl and the robes, and so I went up to visit. And if I recollect correctly, what happens is you ride the overnight train up to Ubon, and there's no air conditioning. They probably had first class in those days, but we never saw it for quite some time. And so it was not as bad as the trains in India, but that was this all-night train ride, and sitting on these hard benches with a lot of people, windows open so there was fresh air, and just like all night. You're sitting with the train to its destination, so you arrive about 6 in the morning. And usually someone would offer you a ride. They see monks and they wanted to, be supportive, especially Western monks, and would give us a ride to the monastery. And if the timing was right, we could usually catch the alms round with going on alms round. But of course, I was just coming in things, so I think we kind of missed that and waited for everybody to return. So this Satimanto kind of introduced me, and there's this long dining hall where there's benches on each side and room to walk down the middle. And then at the front was his seat. It was like exclusively for him. It was kind of a nice made plinth of cement, and had nice linoleum and vinyl on it, and nice kind of soft seat and things where he sat. And so when he was available, we paid respects, and so it was all translated. Satimanto was just saying I was Pabakaro, come from Wat Bowarn, where I'd become a monk, or I was a novice monk and was interested in coming. And I think generally he was welcoming. He wasn't. When I first asked if he was fierce for the Satyamantu, he kind of laughed because he heard about Ajahn Mahabua, and Ajahn Mahabua was known to be quite fierce, kind of stick-carrying, Kru Ajahn. And so Satyamantu laughed, and when I met him, right away it was kind of this kind of warm presence. You just felt welcome, even though I didn't know anything really about Thai. It was quite maybe a month, 6 weeks, whatever, in robes. And of course I had all these Bangkok robes, so they were all kind of shiny, orange, stand out from everybody else kind of robes. So it's like the new guy on the block. And he's, bigger than a lot of people. Most of them, in fact. So it really kind of stood out. But I so invited to go sit at the end of the line where the novices sat. And of course, you're talking about novices in Thailand. There's all these little 6, 8, 10-year-old little Thai boys, So you're kind of looking down there, and these are your buddies in the line of food. And because you're a junior novice, you sit at the end of the small novices. So you're kind of there at the end, and big and towering, and these little guys next to you. And was my first introduction to there. And I don't remember a lot about the food. I didn't have a lot of problems with the food. I was one who was known in the army as garbage gut, so I could pretty much eat anything. I never got enough, so people would shove their army food at me that they didn't like, but I'd eat it because I was always so hungry. So standard fare, as Ajahn Amaro was described, as the sticky rice, and the question we'd often get, can you eat the sticky rice? And of course we can eat it because it's all that was being offered, so you had to eat it. And these were the relatively early 1971. Things were still fairly sparse. He wasn't that well known, and so the intention was to visit, see if it was possible to stay, see if it felt right for me. But I don't think there was a lot of exchange at that particular time, and I think we had the opportunity to go up to Tam Seng Pet that I mentioned the other evening and meet Ajahn Sumedho that had the funny feet that I was very worried that my feet would look like that in no short time. He was really the key for those early years because he was the translator. He'd been there 5 years, so he was kind of the big brother who had paved the way for all of us and had been on his own, and his Thai was good. And he was acclimated, and the food and everything. He was really so that was an important aspect of going to live with Venerable Ajahn Chah. I think what happened, I came back to Bangkok and kind of got final permission to initially been to go up and visit, and then I wanted to actually go up and stay. And so I got permission and returned before the Rains retreat, and Ajahn Chah decided to send us all up to this Tam Seng Pet monastery. I think there was a total of 6 Westerners. Lumpur Liam was there, another senior monk that was kind of not so much in a teaching role, but was there. And Ajahn Lumpur Liam went to Ajahn Chah sent him to help to look after us. One other senior Thai monk, and then Ajahn Sumedho and the other 5 or 6 of us. And I don't remember precisely, but I remember one of the first things was getting my forest robes. I was able to turn those in, and for a monk it's a little different. You kind of go through a period where they really kind of put you aside, because not everybody in Thailand in the monastic life keeps the discipline at a high level like Ajahn Chah taught. And so for the community to get a chance to see the standard of this monk's behavior, and also for the monk to kind of see if this is a place he really wanted to live, you kind of sat at the end of the monks. And so it would be a while, and if things worked out, a few months, 6 months, I don't remember the time frame per se, but then they would have a ceremony and kind of welcome you to the community if they felt that you were really interested and wanted to stay. So it wasn't like an ordination. It was just a formal, okay, you seem serious, you want to stay with Lumpo, spend time here, and so we'd like to, invite you in. For a novice, it wasn't so much the same. Plus, I think the robes they're kind of factory sewn robes, so I don't think they were terribly big. And they kind of dug out the biggest. There might have been some of Lumpo robes laying around that they had custom made for him that was big. I don't really recall. But I do know, I think that the bowl, and I remember I got this kind of big, it was kind of an odd shape, because these were the old iron bowls before they had the stainless steel bowls that you had to fire to get this coating to prevent them from rusting. And of course the first bowls were clay. And so this is kind of the next generation of iron bowls. And so it was kind of big and odd shape, but I was pretty proud of it, because it was my novice forest bowl, and it was bigger than this little, these little Bangkok bowls, these tiny little things, like a little teacup or something. So got me a big bowl, so that was important. Didn't necessarily mean they were going to put more food in it, but it was big. So the flavor, really, from day one, the kind of the tone of being there was one of austerity, one of a seriousness and a commitment, and like the real thing. It was not. It was kind of like I described in Vietnam, in a sense, but very, very different. But I had arrived, and this was ever doing what I had read about and had ideals about. So I was very, very inspired and young, youthful, energetic, ready to engage, and so I did. That first rains retreat, all being up at Tum Seng Pet, was probably about, I don't know if you remember, Ajahn, it was maybe 50 miles away from Wat Pah Pong or something like that, Tum Seng Pet, 75 kilos, 80, 90 kilos maybe. And of course, in the rains retreat, some of you may be familiar, but as a monk, you're not supposed to travel only for important business, and you can only be away for like 7 days at most. So what Lumpo would do we'd go to visit the branch monasteries, and kind of, as he said, come to Chidya, to come to give us a medicinal injection, and stay for several days, and maybe visit a couple of monasteries in one area, stay for a few nights. And so he came to us and was obviously wanting to see how we were doing, and how Ajahn Sumedho was doing. It was, Lupa Sumedho's first command position. He wasn't like the senior monk or the Ajahn in the monastery, but all the Westerners really were looking to him. So he was his first, I think, step up into a leadership role, and I mean he did well. I think it was hard for him without a doubt, but he rose to the occasion. And so one day, that day when he visited, I remember, and it was an older kind of sala, as we called them. So they just had the corrugated iron roofs. The floor was cement, a smooth cement, and the sitting mat was a thin bamboo mat, like about that thick. Can you see? And then you had a sitting cloth like Ajahn got underneath him. So there's a tremendous amount of padding in those, as you can see.
2 layers.
That's 2 layers. We had one, so that's really posh. And on the floor you sat. And the linoleum kind of took the coldness and the harshness of the cement out of the way. If you had a piece, it was kind of broken up and coming apart in places. So you might be half on the cement and half on a piece of kind of tile flooring, lino. And we sat as he gave us a Dhamma talk. To this day, I don't know how long it was. And I think with being the translation and the time frame, I think somewhere between and I don't want to tell a fish story here. I think somewhere between 2.5 to maybe up to 5 hours, and that's my, give or take, at least a couple, 2-3 hours. And so this was introduction to the teaching from Venerable Ajahn Chah. It's when I really became a Buddhist. And wow. And I don't remember, because I didn't know any Thai. None of us did. Satimanto knew a little bit, but nobody else really knew any. So we were totally dependent on Ajahn Sumedho. But it was a beautiful talk. And to this day, I don't believe he was trying to, test us and to make us sit there. What I do know is that sitting there, I was saying the other day that we have this polite posture, so I can't do it anymore. But this one's crossed in front, and this one's tucked behind. It's called papiyat. So, like Ajahn sitting right now, and that's the posture. You can't sit cross-legged. You can't change your legs and point them at the teacher. You had to switch. Basically, you learned how to switch by kind of just like Ajahn's doing, like that. So that was the movement. So you can imagine how many times myself and the other monks did that switch. And it's like, what a relief. And it was, as time went on, of course, the relief was just like there, and then it was gone. So he went back to the other side, and very kind of torturous and restless. But there was incredible energy, there was incredible heart, and it was like, I don't care. It's just like, and that wasn't even a conscious thought. It was like, I'm here. And this great teacher, and I don't think anything that. It was just, I'm getting these first-hand teachings, and everything else had been kind of reading books, and the Buddha this and the Buddha that, and here's this genuine meditation master. And as best as I can recall, it was little bit of like the Handbook for Mankind of Venerable Buddhadasa that I first read when I was still a soldier. And I think the thing I remember about that, he said he said, I think, what is what? I think was the wording. It's like to learn what is what, so just like, or as Ajahn Sumedho, we all know, unquote, that, the way things are. And so the general message was that, to just put your books down and be here and start to just be with the way things are, the way it is. And that was the general message. And it just was like, I just felt so kind of relieved, because I said, yeah, I understand that. That makes sense, because I was still up in my head very much. And I don't consider myself, a big intellect. But what I had studied of Buddhism was, more kind of the memory and what I read and things. So I was very much up in my head. So he's really said, it's okay, let your head go and let yourself come down into the citta, to the heart, to where you feel, where you can understand, and where this practice really is. And of course, this is 43 years later that I'm translating this. That's, I don't think how I would have articulated at that time. But it's how I articulate it now, because I really felt and I forget when in my monastic life that I said that's when I started practicing Buddhism. I really felt that's when I kind of became a Buddhist. And that was a very, very powerful time. This monastery was beautiful. So he was there for a short time. And so living with him, it didn't mean you'd actually be with him. There were those periods where you'd actually be living in the same monastery. But he had a lot of branch monasteries, and we'd have an opportunity to be out on our own, which was good as well. But what was really wonderful about that particular place is it was really beautiful. It had a lot of little caves and overhangs, this whole big kind of mountain. I say mountain, maybe it was, 300 meters, 500 meters. It wasn't huge, but it was, you had to hike up to the top. It was a pretty good walk. But it had all these old formations that were cave or cave-like. Not so much caves you walk into, but like these beautiful overhangs. So you'd have this whole kind of like almost a Dhamma hall or a sala that was just kind of back in. You could walk into it, and these overhangs, and had these incredible vines coming down. And then they had built, the villagers had built these little huts with these rock formations. So they just built it right onto the stone. So you'd be in your little kuti, we call them, these little huts, and half of the kuti would be the stone, and then they would actually form it, tailor it to meet into the stone. So it was closed, and they were really pretty neat. And of course the smell of bat dung was just, was everywhere. So it was like rustic, and it was like, yeah, it was like, wow, it does. I get kind of almost chills, and I'm thinking how cool that was, and just in such a austere place, and yet everything that we needed was provided. Think about that. So we had food, we had shelter, we had clothing. If we got sick, we would be taken care of. So there's your 4 basic requisites, which is really the embodiment and the expression of the male and female monastics, the devotees that give up, that go forth from the home to the homeless. And so here we are having this incredible opportunity to live in that way. And it's only reflecting now and a little bit over the, last 24 hours maybe, that I just started to realize it's like, wow, pinch yourself, man. You were there. You lived like this. And it was how it was. But I realized that it was very, very real, very, demanding and hard, but there was just it kind of brought out the best. And of course we were young, had incredible energy. And then they were known up there for these long, bindabas, these long alms rounds. And how long? I think the longest one was maybe a round trip of, maybe it was 10 miles. It was 6 or 8, I think. It was fairly long. And you go right at the crack of the dawn. If it was further away, you'd leave before the sun came up, so you had time to get there. And of course, the walk was really delightful. There were these beautiful roads, and had all this kind of, the roads were made with kind of the rail stone, those nice soft stones on the railroad tracks, there are no points on them or anything. I'm being facetious. They were really sharp, and so you would walk on these lovely rail stones, and every step was like, a step into feeling. Yes, thank you, Ajahn. And I remember it was Lumpur Kema Dhammo. And we would discuss this sometimes. And of course, if the senior monk wore sandals, then you could. But it wasn't really cool, even though the senior monk wore it. It was like kind of wimpy. So, if he wore them, you could, but you probably wouldn't. And he usually didn't. And of course, their feet are like leather. They just got like leather, like hobbit feet, without the hair. And they were tough. And your feet got tough with time. And so I remember one time we were chatting or something, and Lumpur came and said, well, don't walk on the rocks, walk on the air. And it was really a great insight. So instead of focusing on the coming down and your weight onto the sharp stone, think about gliding through the air. So instead of walk on the stones, walk on the air. It's just kind of a shift. And it worked a little bit, but the stones still hurt. They get a little contrast on the feeling. So I was a novice monk. Novice monks can misbehave a little bit. I know you'd be shocked to hear if I did, but I remember one really funny thing. I was just laughing, remembering this, and I'll share it with you. I mean, you have to appreciate that everything sensual is gone. I mean, like kaput, zap. It's like it's gone. So you have the meal, okay, and the meal is once and only once. There's nothing happening after that meal. And up there, it was fairly rustic. When he showed up, some people from the town would come and bring some nice, town curries or some sweeties or one of the big ones was like a big, these big kind of, they were like an ice chest kind of thing, but they were round, and they'd fill them with this delicious sweet black Thai coffee with ice. And it just, you could eat it with a spoon almost. It was absolutely scrumptious. And that was kind of the height of any kind of drink and you could have it in the afternoon or the evening. And so that would come sometimes. But it wasn't an everyday thing. Coke and Pepsis were like, the elixir of the day was. Like to get a Coke or a Pepsi. And that was a big deal. And to get ice with them, whew, that was really a big deal. So we would go on alms round, and I'd be starving by the time the morning came. And you didn't really think about food. Maybe you did. Maybe you dreamed about it. I mean, there's a lot of interesting dreams that celibate monks have. But food was a big one. And we'll leave it at that. But I was so hungry, and so because I was a novice, I'd walk behind the monks. So I'd usually be the last one. And I'd usually carry the Ajahns bowl. So as soon as you finish, you run up real quickly, and you do this, and he puts the bowl over your head, and you have yours. So you've got two bowls. I got the Ajahns bowl, I got my bowl. So you're walking back, and kind of at the back of the line. And this sticky rice, first thing in the morning, it was steaming. It was hot. And when it's hot, it's incredibly succulent and soft. Well, this young novice named Pabakro just happened to open the lid one time and look at this and says, wow, that looks, and it's hot. It's going to be cold by the time we eat it. So I started to make a little ball, and I had a bite one day. And, that was it. I got addicted to hot sticky rice, kind of sneaking at the back of the line. And I remember sometime later, I told Ajahn Sumedho, and he looked at me, and he wasn't too scolding, but it was like, he was kind of thought it was humorous, but that's how bad it was. And I don't see Venerable Ajahn ever doing anything like that. I just
You didn't see.
And we haven't heard the admission yet, but. And if that's the worst that ever happened, I think we're in pretty good shape. But I remember it was, once I started, it was kind of like, you took the first puff of a cigarette or something. It's like I couldn't stop. Much better than a cig. And it was hot. It was sticky. And it was just delicious. And every village had a little different taste. So even after that, I remember you go to a new place and it was like, oh, let's taste the sticky rice. So before you start, not in that way when you actually started eating, but it was just lovely to kind of taste the local rice, and they all had a little different flavor because the fields were different, the soil was different, the water was different. So and I just had an appreciation for this glutinous rice, which I still really like to this day. So life went on, and the curries were pretty basic, but it was kind of the way things were. And Ajahn Sumedho's encouragement was just to, go Bindabad and eat your food, was what he would say. Go on alms round, eat your food, just, go on with the routine, and just that encouragement. And we'd be up at we were really, the bell would ring at 3 a.m. and usually expected to be down, depending, but usually about 4 that you would meet. And with chanting, and then, an hour, maybe, or a little longer of meditation. And then as soon as, that we'd get up and do some sweeping, simple chores, and get ready to go on an alms round was the kind of the morning round. So it was really it was a beautiful time of the day. The walk was lovely. You had to go out and exercise, just kind of get out. It was really a lovely, it's just a grand, incredible, thing to be a part of, to walk and have these people with their devotion to give these simple offerings. I remember one morning the food had been passed out, and so basically your ball of sticky rice that you made, basically the encouragement was to make it like that was just the right amount for your stomach, So, what are your size of your hands? And so, I could have a big piece because my hands were pretty big. So that's what Ajahn Chah taught. And then sometimes he would jokingly in a talk, he said, well, this is the amount. He says, but what happens with a lot of you monks is like it starts here, and somehow gradually it starts to expand, so your fingers no longer touch, and the ball of rice gets a little bigger. And, which could be the case. Or you could really squeeze it really tightly, and then you got more bang for your buck, as it were, and, more rice in the ball. And the food was simple, it was basic, and you put your rice in there, and you've got this round bowl with this round ball of rice. So everything goes to the bottom. There's really no other place. And you could either do a practice of just sitting and letting things fall in your bowl, Or you could, before each thing came, you could kind of turn your bowl just very subtly, turn it so what was coming, it would go right there, but then the monk distributed it, wouldn't put it there, he'd put it over where you didn't want it, because it wasn't sure how he'd kind of dump it into the bowl. You never could be sure. So in the end, most of the sticky rice ended up kind of soggy with the kind of firm stuff on top, and then everything else, down in the bottom. So maybe a curry too, some wild leaves, or maybe some garden vegetables sometimes. A little fish or dried meat, maybe a banana, and was a kind of the sweet, which was absolutely delicious if you had no other sweets. To just get a banana was a big deal. So one morning I'm down at the end of the line, and you wait. Once your food has been handed out, you sit and you wait. And so when in there it was like when the senior monk started, then the next monk could start. So you're kind of waiting. And so, if you're 10th in line or something, you've got 9 other people to kind of reach down and obviously begin eating. So it's kind of, one and the other, and you're kind of, you've got peripheral vision, right? So you can you see really well out of that side that where you're waiting to get the starting gun. And so it comes, eats, and then you start. So this one day I was eating, and I picked up a ball of sticky rice and some of the curry, and there was this red ant. And I says, it didn't gross me out really. I just, red ant. So I put it in the spittoon next to me. Took another couple bites, and all of a sudden, like, more red ants started to show up. And I realized, this is a red ant curry. So, I continued. Then I got the one out of my spittoon and brought it back in my bowl because I didn't want to lose the protein. And as horrible as it might say, or kind of, not horrible, but what's the word, kind of, gross or repelling or even repulsive, some of these things, it's like hunger's an interesting thing, so it's really relative. And so, it could be grossed out about it. It didn't, why should I let it bother? They're eating it, and there's nothing wrong with it. Nobody's probably died, so you just kind of ate what was there. It was good if you saw the things. Sometimes you didn't see them and know quite what was in like the chili paste or something. They used things like dung beetles, and they mushed them all up in your chili paste, so you didn't really know there were dung beetles in there. And but sometimes you get like silkworms, and which were a delicacy, and just depending on where you are, and it was just very basic livelihood that the villagers that supported us have. And so, kind of, if it moved and it didn't have wheels or heels, we ate it, or they ate it, so we ate it. They offered it on. So vegetarianism and that was really kind of a non-issue, because anything you got, you really you ate it. You needed it for your nourishment. So I think it was the first. I spent about a year as a novice, and I think eventually came back to Wat Pah Pong and got ready for ordination as a bhikkhu. And there was a big these ordinations would usually be quite a few people. And so Ajahn Chah thought that myself, Paul Brider, Warapanyo, some of you read Venerable Father, he wrote that. And then Lumpur Khema Dhammo, who's still in robes here. And so we were the 3 Westerners, and there were like about 22 or 23 Thais. And so your seniority is based on when you ordain, from if it's on one day, or if it's, the day you ordained the day before, then whoever ordains the next day, you're senior to. And then if you're in a group, those who take the upasambhada, the chanting and things, become bhikkhus before you. So he made sure that the 3 Western monks were the last of the 22 or 23. So, he knew that he wanted to kind of keep us in our place. And so then that order was that Warapanyo was first, I was second, and then Lumpur Khema Dhammo was third. So, Warapanyo was like probably 8-10 minutes senior to me, and I was 8-10 minutes senior to Lumpur Khema Dhammo. And that's how it worked. You didn't think of minutes, but you ordained first, so then the deference would go to the more senior person. And so that first rains retreat, I was sent off to a place near the Lao border called Wat Kuan. Kuan is like dam, and it was the Sirantorn Dam, which is the name of the princess near the Lao border. And it was really a beautiful monastery. And it was very wild, very rural. Still a lot of monkeys, wild boar. I saw a bear once, just kind of off in the distance, which was pretty rare, even in those days. So it did connect to the wilder jungles of Laos, but we didn't get snakes, of course, and the kind of creepy crawlers that you find in Asia. But it was my first monk vasa, and so it was very inspiring to kind of go forth and be lifted up into the kind of higher ordination, as they say, the upasampada, and be part of this tradition. We had a young monk who's still alive that was the senior monk there, and sometimes I'm quite embarrassed because I think about how I was. I don't recall a lot of things, but I just realized that I thought I was sensitive but I probably wasn't that sensitive to culture and things. And you're trying. I mean, everything is the example, and the way you learn is by watching, and more than language, although language started to gradually come for each of us in different ways. But so much the training was not listening to the master every day. The training was just day in, day out being a bhikkhu, not great insights or great samadhi or great anything really, just the kind of the daily grind of living. But it wasn't a grind as much because we had a routine, there was support, and we were doing it together. And so it really helped to hold you. Just like here in this retreat, it's not different, only much more austere. And so that really was important. And our huts, our little kutis were incredible. I mean, because you'd walk and at night after chanting and things, it'd be dark. And so we had torches, these like kind of old style torches, and we'd get batteries. Sometimes batteries would get low or run out. So you try to go back with a candle. And, but you had to be careful because there were not just like poisonous snakes and things, but they'd have these, they had a lot of like species of termites and ants, an incredible amount of ants. And I mean, I just like, without even hardly thinking, I can think of 5 species. I remember the names of some of them. You had Mot Dang, Mot Ngam, Mot Lin. Mot Lin was like a really fun one because they all traveled like armies, on the jungle floor. And Mot Lin they called it, it's like tongue ant, if I remember correctly. But it wasn't about I think because it grabbed you with its pincers and it burned. And the reason it burned is it had a stinger. So it was a very unique little well-built system. You'd walk over if they're in a row and you didn't see them, and you couldn't, even with a torch, sometimes you couldn't see what was there, but you knew it as soon as you stepped on it. So you jumping and start dancing around, shaking your robes off, because these things immediately, when they bite, if they've disturbed, of course, they attack. And so they bite just to hold on, and then they turn their tails under and sting you. And it was a pretty good bite. I mean, it wasn't fatal or anything, but it certainly, you didn't want to stand there and see how many you could, stand. It was interesting if you're doing a ceremony in Iran, because when we did these circumambulations around the monastery, because you never knew when they were going to be out, and they moved through the jungle. That was their livelihood. They were there and just doing their thing. And so you can be walking this circumambulation. Everybody's walking very calm with candles and incense and trying to do Buddho in the first round and Dhammo in the second and Sangho in the first. But I remember one evening we're going around and the monk ahead of you says, Mot Lin, which is, stinging ants. And he starts jumping and you're trying to be composed and you walk in them and then they're kind of all over. So you can't avoid them. So it always made for an interesting kind of composed, pious kind of ceremony if you ran into these things. And you had ones that came into your little hut, Mot Ngam, and they were very strong, like ants are. I don't know what the ratio is, but they're incredibly powerful, just the littlest ones. And they come, and what they look for, you get is they're good at smelling and finding things to eat. So what had happened, a lot of these huts we were in, like wasps, different kinds of insects, would build their little nests in the fabric of the hut. And so they knew these, somehow knew where they were. So they came in to go in, and they'd dig it out, the mud, that even though it was hard from the wine, eat the larvae, come as by the millions. I mean, it was just like armies of them. In this particular one, they were little tiny guys, but they were really powerful. So as soon as they were there, you could wake up and feel them, and you knew right away it was like, it's not going to be a good night. You had to get up, brush yourself off, and just leave. And termites were worse when they attacked, or when they came into the kuti. But and then they had these big ones that were kind of like the sentinels, I guess, and they went along, and they had these huge pinchers, and they kind of like were on the side as the army was moving. They kind of were there. It was fascinating to watch them. But if they did come into your hut, it was kind of like, you're not going to sleep that night. You either go over to the meditation hall and rest there or something. They come in, they do their thing, and then they leave. And you couldn't really do anything. You try to sweep them and whatever. I mean, there were methods like you put little moats around your hut so they wouldn't come up, or put dark rags of engine oil, or you'd even use DDT sometimes, but none of it. I think they fed on DDT. So, such was life in the jungle, in the forest of Thailand. So really, the memory is just the kind of the persevering and the steadfast kind of being there and being just as patient as you could. I mean, my time was not easy. I don't think it was easy for any of us, but the ease was, I think it was made easy by the incredible faith and heart that we had, and the devotion to be there, and really that commitment was so powerful, more than I can even think back. And it's kind of like some of my experiences in Vietnam. Where was my head at that time? I think back, and I can only think that I just had incredible devotion, and I think we all did, and it was pretty amazing. There's so many kind of experiences with Ajahn Chah over my years, and some of the beautiful times were in the simpler times where he was just sitting under his little kuti, and it was beautiful. It still exists today. So it had been built up on stilts, which all of them were, but this one was done very elaborately, very nicely made, and it's not luxurious by any standards of the ones they build these days. But it had an upstairs, a nice deck on the upstairs, and a little room in the middle of it with a toilet up there that he slept in. That's where he went. And then underneath was this beautifully, it was I don't know what the material was, but it was like marble. It was a cement type material, but when it was finished, it was very soft and had a nice soft texture to it and a cool feel. So it was quite pleasant to sit on because it was cool and it was smooth. It was still hard, but and so much happened in that little space with him, and that's where that we hung out a lot whenever possible. He would just sit there, and 2 or 3 monks would be around him, one maybe behind, and doing his shoulders or whatever, and he's in there maybe chewing betel nut and spitting it in his spittoon, and he's got a mosquito whisk, and just talking, and one monk on each foot. Maybe you got 2 or 3, might be one on his foot, one on his leg, and he'd just be there and just kind of chatting away and talking, and maybe some villagers would come. They like to come at the end of their work day and just kind of hang out, the ones that were really devout. And some of the most profound teachings happened there, as well as in the Dhamma hall where he would come. I recall that one of his things that and I never could really verify this. It's just kind of made somewhat of an assumption that he that there was intention there, but it's hard to know that he's like torturing us or making us kind of be patient with something. But one of the big ones was on the Uposatha day, and that's when hundreds of people came to keep the 8 precepts for the 24 hours, come in the morning and offer food. And so it was a nice meal on that day. People would show up, and so it was kind of, if you were into your food, which most of us were, that was a kind of a good day, because even down at the end of the line, you might still get a nice little sweetie, maybe even a cake if you're lucky. And it was very pleasant. And then afterwards, you'd have to go into the meditation hall, and then he would go in and give the precepts, go up and chant the precepts, and then he'd give a talk. So, it's getting, 10, 11 o'clock, maybe by its time, maybe noon, depending on how long he talked. And at some point, he would kind of invite us to leave. So we go back and have a little rest and, kind of prepare ourselves for the all-night sitting that night. And so because a lot of people would come on that day, he'd be sitting with them most of the day. And very little time did he take for himself, even to go urinate. I mean, he just sat there and received people, and was just with them and present with them, and everything from silliness to more profound teachings he offered. So as the evening came around, the evening bell would be rung. We'd do normal chores, 3:30 in the afternoon, water hauling, filling the various places to where we'd bathe. Out of these big, huge urns, we'd fill them. That's where monks would bathe. Things for washing the bowl, which was separate. Things for cleaning your feet when you came back from the alms round. So this was like the daily routine, just simple chores, hauling water from a well. You get 4 or 5 monks would pull the rope and pull the bucket up. 1 or 2 monks would pour it into these urns, and then they were like oil cans, 5-gallon kind of drums, and they'd cut the top off and nail a piece of wood, tie a piece of rope, and then we had these long bamboo poles, and you'd stick a bamboo pole through 1 or 2. Most of us carried 2, and then you'd hoist it up onto your shoulder, and you'd walk around the forest and different places to where this and fill this water up. And that was one of the main chores, sweeping sometimes. So the evening would come around, and the bell would ring probably 7-ish, similar to here, 7:30. Remember, it was dusk. Insects started to call evening insects and things, and so we'd go and we'd assemble, and we'd wait. And so, time could go on. We were sitting in there waiting, and of course we were waiting for him. Things didn't start until he came. And so, and he may have been busy up till just a half hour after we'd already been sitting there. So he hadn't had a bath yet. So he'd go and have his bath and everything. And so you could sit for quite some time waiting for him just for the evening kind of ceremony to start, which would be the chanting. And usually I don't think we sat then. I don't remember. Perhaps we'd sit. Yeah, the chanting first, but then the sitting would maybe he'd be invited right away to get up and give a talk. And you never really knew how long that was going to be. Was there an average? Not really. He would talk as long as he felt like talking, and we'd sit there. And so it really wasn't acceptable to leave before he finished his talk. So we'd already been sitting, and to get up while you're waiting was not. You could do it, but it wasn't cool. How else can I say it? I mean, it was just really it wasn't an expectation. It was just you knew that because nobody else was. And so if they're not, then you can't. And that's just the standard. So you knew this is how you learned, that they sat and they weren't like having their legs out or stretching out or standing up and having to stretch everything. So, okay, then I can't either. And so the tremendous amount of just kind of sitting with things as they were. But when he came, it would always be livened up, even as our Thai got better, or my Thai got better, could understand. It was really beautiful because it was such devotion with the villagers, and his talks were lively, not always understanding. There wouldn't be any translation, and until you really started to understand, unless it was specified for, as an individual, or sitting with Ajahn Sumedho in the earlier days, but certainly for a lot of us, as we got better with Thai, we would, understand, to be able to ask questions, and that was really, I felt you were really that you had arrived in a deeper way, that you'd be able to converse and talk with him, and it was just a whole new world opened up. This, when the language opened up and could converse with him and look at him and be understood and understand, it was very, very special. And, you became more of a person, and he became more to you, to him to you, and you to him. It was just really very heartwarming, because now you knew him, because you could talk to him and not have to go through translation or guessing and stuff. And so, I don't know, I just felt like it knew him more personally when that happened. And I've never really recollected that, but I realized how true that is. So the international monastery, which was a kind of significant time, and that when that happened, and obviously he had a sense of that, and a place he saw that more and more Westerners are coming. So I think he saw very clearly that we would need a place to be together, and it was difficult, I think, for a lot of the Thai monks to have us. I mean, they were very patient with us. They were kind. They weren't in any way not welcoming, but I think it was hard, and he realized that, well, we'd probably be better off, especially for training, and he probably had a vision of, well, eventually they'll probably go back to their respective countries, I don't know, to teach. So he knew that we needed that experience to work things out. We spoke the same language, and so this international monastery, what Nana Chah started, and with his ragtag team of 6-8 Western monks, and went over and started this. The villagers were delighted to have us, and this thing just grew up. And it's one of the hot spots of the Northeast these days, which is not a lot of hot spots up there, but it's very well known, and a lot of monks over the years have kind of passed through and had their training there and ordained there and stuff. So it's really served an incredible place in the history of Ajahn Chah's Western disciples. I recollect one time, it was the only time, and that I was a senior monk at that time, and had come over one evening to discuss some business with him, whatever, and had done that and chatting, and then just you're there's other people there, and maybe discussed, and they start talking to somebody else. And then he started to give a talk, just quite simple. And I was just listening, and as he was giving this talk, I was kind of applying at what he was saying. And basically he was saying, if you're going to listen to the Dhamma, that you have to kind of compose yourself, in the center of your citta, and then allow yourself to just listen, to receive the listening through the door of the ear, to listen. And then what is there to be recollected will be recollected in the right time and the right place. So it's not like I have to sit here and make notes or try to remember what he said. And then he also talked about expounding the Dhamma, that it was just there. And sometimes people would want to hear a Dhamma teaching, and he was kind of blank. Other times that they wouldn't, know what to say, or didn't think he had anything to say, and then it would be there. And so he's giving all this teaching. So the very next evening, I'm back at Nana Chah Monastery, and I'm doing walking meditation in the evening, and it just came back to me. This whole simple, it's just like a one-page teaching. So I just went in and I wrote it down. And so Ajahn Amaro wrote it in this fairly recent, I think, that you read these teachings. It was called Learning to Listen. And it didn't tweak it much. And as I said, the only thing I ever wrote down, but was very, very profound and beautiful, just a simple teaching about how one can listen, and how we in that really calm space without trying to accumulate or get. And then also how we kind of expound, and he also went on to say, I remember that he believed that the Buddha taught in this very same way. And I was mentioning this quote. He said that the Buddha had given a teaching one time, and then he asked the monks there. He said, "Well, have you ever heard this before?" And he said, "Well, no." And he said, "Well, neither have I." And what did Bhikkhu Bodhi call that, Ajahn? Free association.
Free
free retelling of the story of the Buddha. So whether it was true or not, it was certainly very meaningful, and I certainly believe a lot of it was true, because certainly for him, because it would be very much a time and place teaching. It would be very much what was appropriate for the time, and that's what he was teaching, is that basically, and I've said this and implied it to many of you in some of our groups, is like that if Ajahn and I sat up here by ourselves, nobody was in here, we wouldn't know what to say. I mean, we could chat, we could sit, but what I'm saying now would not be the same, would it? So you are part of this. Is your talk. It's our talk. It's our kind of sharing, isn't it? Because your interest and your participation by listening, by being interested, helps to draw this out. So there's this incredible connection that we share, and to me it's a pretty amazing kind of thing that we have. And I'm sure you've experienced in ways, maybe one-on-one and with a friend or whatever, just all of a sudden there's connectedness, and it's just you draw each other out in a really beautiful way. When he was getting very ill, he went up to back to this cave of the Diamond Light Monastery up in Amnat Jalun. And they had built a beautiful, nicer than one he had at Wat Pah Pong. This wealthy supporter had built this for him and invited him to go up there and rest, because his health was not great. And I was being asked to come in and be closer to him. But I wasn't official, as far as he just kind of drew me in. I think I shared this. He liked to have me around. I was big. He felt, stable, because he was getting unstable on his feet. Different things were happening. This was like before he had surgery or anything. So he went up there to rest, this rains retreat. And so one evening we were sitting, and this beautiful, like his kuti at Wat Pah Pong was one thing, but this was like, it was elevated. It was bigger, and then it had the structure it was all one level, so, but it was raised up because they had built a water collecting, tank basically underneath it of cement, and sealed the cement so that you could, rain off of the roof could be collected, and could use that for bathing or washing bowls. It probably wasn't good for drinking because of the cement, but it would be a place to store water, because water, it was all stone, so water it was primarily rainwater that you collected to be able to use up at the top of this mountain. So one of our great drinks that we discovered, probably going to be horrifying, but it was Coffee Mate, hot water, sugar, white sugar, but good white sugar, like Thai white sugar, so it's different than the white sugar, the refined sugar we have here, and then cocoa. And so the Coffee Mate, of course, was absolutely delicious. I mean, you didn't have any kind of milk product or anything, so Coffee Mate, as horrid as you might think of it, is now, and maybe some still use it. I don't think it has a lot of good things in it particularly, but it was all kind of an allowable, so we mix it up and make this lovely chocolate drink. And because it was called Coffee Mate, for some reason, he would always play on words, so he ended up calling it a communist, So he said, and he would say, "Oh, make me a communist," So he'd go and stir up this drink. There was a novice there, and kind of stirred up this drink, and it was very, very tasty with the sugar, the nice sweet sugar, the cocoa, the Coffee Mate, and the hot water. I mean, it was very delicious. What we had. So we're sitting there one evening, and he was kind of sipping his communist, and there were maybe 4 or 5 of us, just a handful, myself and I think 1 or 2 Thai monks, and then I think there was a Western novice up there, and I was sitting, and it's just really idyllic. I mean, at night you just see the whole universe. It's just like you're out with the stars, and it's just clear, and it's just so beautiful, and usually a little breeze, and very peaceful, hardly any mosquitoes because of the wind and everything. So it was really, really idyllic for practice and things. So we're sitting there just kind of bathing in the beauty of this, and he's sitting there drinking, and he says, "Sabai no?" Oh, it's really, really comfortable, isn't it? And nobody says anything. He's just making a comment. Lom Gadi. That when I'm drinking his tea, everything is good. It's really nice. He says, "Da kad yang deal." He's kind of directed at me. I felt, and they're missing one thing. So I bit. I took the bait. Kad yang hanoi. What are we missing? Pu Ying says there's no women. At me, of all people. I mean, why? So what do you do with that? Well, you don't do anything. We chuckled, and so it was absurd on one hand. On the other hand, it's just like that you have this perfect environment, and the thing that we may be desiring, that not so much, but it's like if we had maybe this one extra thing, it would change it. It's not saying, against women. I mean, nuns could be saying the same thing, but it would change it, if that was there. And so we're missing this thing, but if we just had that one more thing, it would probably be just, perfect. But it's not true, is it? It's like that would change it. And so it was one of those teachings that I remember very distinctly, and it was just so, and that's how it could be, just so direct, something very simple, and yet it just like hit you right in the heart. It's like applied. It fit. And it was very humbling because it came from love, from compassion, and so that was so that rains retreat was really when his health started to fail, and we're kind of getting on in time here, so I don't want to take too much more time, but kind of what happened, and obviously there's a lot of in between that went on over the years, but that was an interesting rains retreat because that, as his health was failing, he went around and visited all of his branch monasteries and kind of was checking in with his senior monks, on his health. There was some other Sangha-ish business that he was concerned about that he just wanted to say. And I think he had a sense that his health was waning and maybe an intuition that he might eventually be incapacitated, whatever. It's hard to know. But it was from there that we eventually went down and into the hospital, had this diagnosis of hydrocephalus, and they did this surgery, put this shunt device in his brain. I mean, it sounds a little extreme, but I mean, basically they punch a little hole, insert a little pump, and then they run a stint, isn't it, down, and I think back behind his neck down into his abdominal area. So you could just do the little pump, and it would just pull the extra, the idea, and then we would pull the extra water or liquid in his brain and just kind of drain it off. I don't know to this day if that's actually what was wrong. They did it. I don't hold that really caused him any great harm. He said initially he felt a little bit better. People be speculated as long as people are alive that were with him at that time. But he submitted to it. He was his intention. It really his intention, as I recall very clearly, was all right. And should you do it? She didn't do it. And he said to me, he says, "Babakaro, it's my brain, it's my head. So if I want to do it, I'll do it." Because there had so many people concerned and wanting about him and everything, and kind of trying to pull him. But he was very firm about it. And so when he said that, I mean, I took it to heart. He said he didn't want to have people coming and going, so I was the guard dog. The Thais loved me doing that because they couldn't. So, give it to the prop Farang, the Westerner. He can be the bad guy. And I made some enemies. People were not happy. In the end, I think people really respected that it helped him to be taken care of and get rest that he needed and all of that. And so from that surgery, things really started to go downhill. Not so much for the surgery, but a lot of things happened. I think he had a kind of a low blood sugar, hypoglycemic attack, that I think can be quite serious if your blood sugar is low for too long. I won't go into the details about that, but it's somewhat speculation. I'm not a doctor. I'm not medically trained. I really don't know. But the important thing is his health did go downhill, and we rose to the occasion, all of us. And I was very honored and privileged to be a key figure in helping with his care, not only helping with his care, but really to set up and train the community of monks that wanted to come forward and look after him. So the care that he had, there's not enough money in the world to buy that care, because you can't buy devotion, or you can't buy love, can you? And so it was priceless, because everybody rose up to come and support the great teacher, the great master, and just to do that was a great honor. So it was really a sacrifice on his part, as I see it, that it had an opportunity then for people to rally around and look after him. Even though he stopped talking, he didn't stop teaching, because here was a living embodiment of bodies get old, they get sick, and ultimately they die. And I never saw that he was in pain. He was comfortable. I mean, he came just almost like a sweet little baby, and it was just this living, breathing presence. Was he conscious? Was he not conscious? Was he enlightened? Why was he like that? I mean, we can speculate all day. I don't think it's worth the time or effort, really. He was a great teacher, a great master, and he gave to his ultimate. He ultimately really gave his life, didn't he, for all of us, just like the Buddha did. So, here we are in modern times and have the example of this great master. And it's so amazing to me to have had this very intimate and opportunity and privilege to be so close to him and be his caretaker and so many things. And so it was more than a friendship. I mean, it was really, I was there like a son caring for a father in so many ways, and so it gives me great, just feel so deeply honored and humbled by having done that, because sometimes I forget and see how, like the Buddha after his passing, that his resonance and presence in the world just gets bigger, and it's just amazing now. Like we just had this. I am meeting, International Elders meeting, that all the Bhikkhu Sangha came together from the four corners of the earth, really, and here it is, kind of vibrant and alive, and it's, of course, ultimately the Buddha, but then here's this living embodiment of someone who we all look to and revere as this great teacher and master who gave us so much in the importance of community, of coming together, meeting together, and holding and harmonious times together, and that is a sign that the Sangha will flourish and not decline. And to see that here in this trip for me has been absolutely incredible. As I said to you the first night that I talked, I said what a great honor. My heart is very full, and it continues that. And then being able to be here and share more with each of you, see you, meet you personally and things has been a great privilege. So we'll be parting ways soon, but even though physically we'll part, I truly, see and feel and believe that we're connected very deeply, especially if we're practicing in this similar way. So even though physical distance may be great, that, the heart distance is always there. We can recollect, this time together. We can hopefully have more times together. We don't know, but when we do have time together, we have made it a positive, a fruitful experience, I hope. And I know Ajahn and I it's our full intention to just give as much as we can and to help and serve, because that's the living embodiment of Venerable Ajahn Chah that we had. So I offer this for your kind of consideration, reflection this evening. Thank you.